Alice in Wonderland is a story about growing up. It's not about hatters or chess pieces or talking cats. Every story worth telling has conflict, and the conflict at the heart of Alice is between individuality and social pressures.
I started thinking that the key to the story was Alice, the character, and who she is, so I wrote the scene with her father in the beginning to give me an idea of where she was coming from.
We knew from the very start that there was going to be stuff about childhood and all that. Kids are creepy, and so is Alice. Also, the Victorian setting was useful for the idea of repression. Everything in the Victorian period was stiff. The buildings were stiff and dark, and, we used that in the first scene with a single lit window. That's it.
Alice's father is the source of her remarkable strength in adversity, and her continual struggle against other people's expectations. She watched him fight unrelentingly and uncompromisingly for his dreams, and that gave her a sense of how ridiculous the expectations of others were. But when we see her next, she's lost that to some extent.
I clothed adult Alice, and she's wearing a fairly standard Victorian party gown. Her dress throughout the rest of the movie becomes more and more interesting until eventually she's wearing armor and chopping off monsters' heads, and the dress is lying on the floor somewhere because you can't bloody well handle a sword in a skirt and blood shows on blue like nothing else.
I put in a lot of lines about time because it ties into the whole growing up thing. Alice is being pressured into this marriage, and she feels like the days of her freedom are becoming few. Like, she didn't have enough time to be a kid, which is how a lot of people feel, I think. And there's this thing in the book about how time has punished the Hatter by freezing him at 6 o'clock forever, and 6 o'clock is tea time, so that kind of shows how the other side of things is pretty awful, too. I mean, being forced to stay at an eternal party would suck, too.
It is also related to the issue of her lack of self-knowledge. Not knowing who she is extends to her size as well. This is explored a lot more in the next scene.
Oh my god, the Red Queen.
The Red Queen was a triumph. I am honored to have been involved in the creation of such a character.
The Red Queen is a kid. She's a giant toddler with a giant head, and that sounds kind of funny, but it's a lot less funny when you stick that toddler in control of the country. She's self-obsessed and rude, like kids are, and she always gets what she wants, or she screams. She has this very childish rivalry with her sister going on. She's incompetent, she never does anything herself, she relies on Stain completely. This extends to her enemies, too. She sticks the Hatter in chains and then has them chopped off because she's so self-centered she can't imagine anyone wanting to hurt her. It's kind of sad because it's not like she's really cruel. She's not sadistic. She just doesn't give a shit about anybody except herself.
Designing the Red Queen was fun. It was very important that her head was huge. She had to have a head like a wedding cake, because babies have these wedding cake heads. If you pay attention, her arms are also abnormally short. Again, like a baby. She's very richly dressed. She likes stuff, having stuff. Her makeup is very heavy because she's all about subtlety. Subtlety is her middle name. And her first and last, in case the audience doesn't get it.
The Red Queen is an example of what happens when the desire to live independent of others takes over from a moral sense. Partially, the movie shows Alice learning to live free of others' demands, but the Red Queen has taken that too far and now lives under obligation to no one. That's a recipe for disaster. She doesn't even acknowledge her subjects' needs, let alone take the steps to fulfill them. She's gone through individualities and emerged in unforgivable selfishness. When she says it's better to be feared than loved, she's showing that selfishness in a way everyone can recognize.
Then the White Queen.
That captures something about the nature of the story. All the most important acts in life are done alone, so why do them to make others happy? But after that, we come to what? I, in my humble opinion, think this is the real climax of the movie.
She goes off and kills the Jabberwocky, and how does it go? And with its head, she comes galloping back.
During the battle scene where Alice talks about the 6 impossible things, that is explicitly stated to be a reference to her father and his impossible defiance of the conventional wisdom, which, in the middle of all this mess about obligation and protection, reminds us that this, in a way, a part of her own defiance and therefore her growing up.
See, sometimes people want something from you because society is a bully and it always wants something, and sometimes people want something from you because there are some actions that are just the right thing to do. And learning the difference between those is what growing up's about, and the only sure way to find your place in the world is to know what you have to do, what you need to do, and what you want to do, the combination. The world is full of people who do whatever the hell they're told, and it's full of people who only care about themselves. There's this line that Alice says earlier. She says, "I make the path," and she does, but she has to make the path to apply to her responsibilities to others. There are certain gifts that only Alice can offer, and she can take care of her family with those gifts. She doesn't have to get married, but she does have to make sure that her mother is secure, and she does both. And now she's grown up.
At the party at the end, when she's futterwackening, and I just can't get over that word. She's got sticks in her hair, and her dress is stained and torn, so if she didn't look that different before, she sure does now. She's not even hiding it anymore.
Ultimately, Alice chooses her own life, but she chooses a life that is upright and good, as well as completely genuine. She's an adult now. She knows who she is and what she wants and what she's capable of. And she knows for absolute certain that our world is just as strange as Wonderland.
BAM!
You know it doesn't really matter, 'cause I'm the Mad Hatter!